What up, Pittsburgh Steelers fans? Breaking news. We've already got a video out. Breaking news about Kendrick Green being traded to the Houston Texans for a 6th-round pick. Now the Steelers have actually made their cuts down to 53. I'm going to pull it up in front of you. I've literally just pulled it up. It's gone live in the last 3 or 4 minutes. I'm going to pull it up. We're going to go through it step by step so that you've got the latest breaking news on who the Pittsburgh Steelers have now cut and released to get to their roster. The Steelers will still make a bunch of moves in the next few days in terms of seeing who else was cut, released, waiver wide, maybe even some more trades. But especially after they've made 2 big trades and they've got picks they can move around, late round picks too. So let's get into the fact of who have the Steelers cut down and released to get to 53. What does the practice squad look like? And what does this first look at the Steelers 2023 team look like? All right, so as we mentioned, Green traded. That's done. Steelers released Zach Gentry. Mark and I talked about this on our show from the 53-man roster prediction over the weekend. We said, and we talked about, we went, no, probably not. Then we talked about surprise cuts when it came to the Steelers on the show that went live on your Monday in the US, and he was a surprise cut there. There we see it. We also said Trey Norwood could be let go. So that's quite interesting. I said maybe, Braden Fehoko, might be released. And he was. Everyone else assured me that I was wrong. But he was. So I've got a bunch of predictions right this offseason. I'm basically 3 from 4 or 4 from 4, depending on how you look at it. Steelers released cornerback Luke Baku, who was seen on the practice squad. I think we've seen a little bit on the practice squad, but we've certainly seen him floating around in the preseason on the extended squad. Running back Greg Bell, receiver Jordan Bird, no surprise there. Receiver Des Patrick, again, no surprise. Linebacker Nick Kwiatkowski. I said this probably about 4 or 5 weeks ago on one of our live shows that I didn't think he'd stay, particularly once they brought in Quan Alexander. Defensive lineman Jonathan Marshall looks floated around the team the last few years. He's gone. Offensive lineman Ryan McCollum. So the Steelers this is an interesting one. This means the Steelers are either going to be playing Nate Herbig, even Isaac Seumalo, or Spencer Anderson at backup center, or they've got a plan here. And that's one thing that I do think we will see them do is probably bring up a backup center that's a bit more experienced, particularly now they've moved on Kendrick Green as well. But I expect Ryan McCollum to end up in the practice squad. So let's see how that comes together. Linebacker David Perales is released. Hopefully they bring him back on the practice squad. He showed a bit of promise at training camp through the preseason. You might see that with Quincy Roche too, because he's been released. Defensive back Trenton Thompson's been released. Again, he could be a good target. He had the interception against the Buccaneers in game 1 of the preseason, but he's also was cut and released by different teams as well previous to that. So kind of not surprised there. Running back Xavier Valladay, he's out too. Cornerback Chris Wilcox and tight end Rodney Williams. Mark and I said that could be a really unlucky guy to make the roster, but given that they cut Gentry, kind of not surprising them to cut Rodney Williams. Rodney Williams can make the practice squad. They could also bring back Zach Gentry onto the practice squad too, particularly because they've got the veteran spots for them now. So we're starting to get to the Steelers 53. As I'm recording, I'm going to try and pull up and see if they've actually listed a depth chart. They don't always do that. Interesting, they kept Adams as well before they kept in cutting Braden Fehoko before that. And because what we haven't seen is a mention of punter. And Mark and I were talking about this earlier on in the week, and we felt that the punter would be Braden Mann. They haven't actually announced that yet, so that's interesting. So the Steelers get closer to 53, but I don't actually think they're quite there yet based on the maths of who's been released. But that's the latest roster update. Cuts as the Steelers move to get to 53.